We're not broken or defeated. We're not divided.
Politicians will fight.
We should be the difference.
Nobody wants death.
We're the United States of America, resolute, unyielding, and united in purpose.
Hello and what's up, political peeps? Per usual, I'm your host Arav Kapoor, and today I have a very serious topic to bring to your attention here on today's very special episode of the GeoPolitical. Fentanyl has plagued American streets for decades since it was originally synthesized as an anesthetic drug in 1959. For reference, the CDC's Overdose Protection Division lays out 3 different waves of the opioid epidemic throughout our beautiful country. The first time that fentanyl left hospitals was in the early 1990s when doctors began prescribing small amounts of this drug to patients, but they quickly accidentally overdosed because of the lethality of the drug, even taken in super small amounts. Then there was a point when doctors became more careful about prescribing fentanyl and other opioids to their patients, but despite this, opioids such as heroin began gaining popularity in the 2010s as fentanyl became less accessible, and heroin was a cheap opioid that was very easy to get addicted to. Then towards the end of the 2010s and coming closer to where we are today in 2025, fentanyl became a cheap, synthetic, easy to produce drug that, we'll talk about this later in today's episode, was being brought into our beautiful country from other nations like China, like Mexico, and a lot of the policies related to different administrations in the United States would have to take the responsibility for allowing fentanyl to become so easily available illicitly in our country. For a while, opioid death rates due to fentanyl rose throughout the United States, and then they began to drop off. Now in 2025, the majority of people who die from opioids, now that we're in the 3rd wave of what the CDC describes as the 3 waves of our country's opioid crisis, is from people who have never taken opioids before. This is because of something called IMFs. IMFs are where a less lethal drug, like even, for example, some alcohol or marijuana, for example, is a few milligrams of fentanyl is compressed into either a powder or a pill with these drugs, and then it becomes lethal even though a person may not know that it's lethal. So as we get more into the demographics today of the people who use fentanyl, where people use fentanyl, and why, we'll break down more into some people who are accidentally using this drug. So to talk about all of this and much, much more, if you've been following me on social media, on LinkedIn, I went to the Civics Bee in 2025's competition. I won the local level competition, speaking about public transportation. And then my friend, Arav Sahu, who's here with me today, won the 2025 Connecticut state level competition, talking about his solution to the fentanyl epidemic in the United States of America. So Arav's going to DC. Let's all please wish him great luck in representing Connecticut at the national stage. And I'm here today to break down what fentanyl is, like we just talked about, the waves of the opioid crisis, gateway drugs, how fentanyl enters certain demographics and geographies, and then he's going to talk about how fentanyl comes into this country and the work he's doing with his Civics Bee and with many other organizations to solve this issue. So Arav, welcome to the GeoPolitical. My apologies for my long-winded intro.
Thank you for having me in the show. It's truly an honor. I won the state level for the Connecticut Civics Bee. I'm representing Connecticut. There's no big honor than that. So let me just start by saying on how this started for me, how I started with this initiative. Long before the Civics Bee, 2 months in fact before the Civics Bee, a mother came to my school and she was talking about fentanyl and how she lost her daughter to this. It was a truly painful story, and no parent should ever go through that, but unfortunately many parents still go through this issue. Her grief is something which is mirrored by countless families all across not only Connecticut but the national stage as well. So that was something which was very touchy to me. I was deeply impacted by that, and I've said that I should do something in order to curb these effects. Not that I can change the course of the nation, but I can do something. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I just need to take initiative.
Right.
Then I saw the Civics Bee. This was in fact my second year participating in the National Civics Bee, and I needed a topic in which I could help my local community. And then I felt like, oh, I wanted to do something about fentanyl. This is a medium to do that. And that's how I started with, my initiative on fentanyl. Fentanyl is a very dangerous drug. It's not something which is very recent. It has been plaguing our country since the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, since its invention and when it came out of hospitals in the 90s.
Right, yeah. And that's unfortunate. People don't want to get addicted. They don't want to be, let's do drugs. They fall into this abyss, and most people never find a way out. It either results to their death, or it results in the death of their surrounding community.
And oftentimes the first time with fentanyl is the last time, unfortunately, because you're not around for any more times.
Yeah. It's 50 times stronger than morphine and 100 times stronger than heroin. And that's just terrible, According to the Drug Enforcement Administration, so we're based in Fairfield, right? The most closest city to us is Bridgeport. 85% of all overdose deaths in Bridgeport tied to fentanyl. And this statistic is almost the same for all over the state. And people have to do something about it. And I'm just taking a small little initiative, which will snowball into a big one.
Right, I think it's really important to talk about what you're doing in the future, which we'll get to in a minute, what you're doing to work on fentanyl and make sure that communities like Bridgeport, for example, where people go to fentanyl maybe because they have nothing better to do, or maybe because they're part of a crowd that uses fentanyl. But people oftentimes say, and I'll share this story right now actually, that when I was working at summer camp this summer as a camp counselor, people go to parties in high school, and if they're drinking illegally or using the smoking, marijuana, whatever it may be illegally, then I asked these people in preparation for this episode, but how do you know that, because I was talking about before, the most fentanyl deaths are from people who don't know they're taking fentanyl, right? Or who have never taken opioids before, because the first time is oftentimes the last time with a drug as deadly as fentanyl. You just said it's over 100 times more deadly than heroin. These people are like, well, fentanyl doesn't come into Fairfield, because, Fairfield, if you think about it, it's a more affluent town. You don't associate this picturesque post road, which is in our background here today, with fentanyl and death and crime. Once you're in the game of illegally drinking or smoking or using marijuana, then it's not like a police officer is standing over you. Well, don't take that pill because that has fentanyl, not heroin in it, right? So it goes back to the conversation gateway drugs, which are alcohol, nicotine, marijuana. They either, number one, get you in a group that may ultimately use fentanyl, or you might accidentally take fentanyl, right?
You never really know if you're taking fentanyl. Most of the deaths for fentanyl, people don't know that they're taking fentanyl. They just think that they're taking heroin, morphine, or the more common marijuana.
Right.
Fentanyl is a gambit used by drug dealers to give that quote-unquote high to people who are taking these pills. So people are basically going to come back for more. But what happens is that these pills are created in an environment which is not regulated properly. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, fentanyl is often chemistrated in a bigger dosage.
Right.
It is made in a bigger dosage. And that's what leads to so many deaths. You never know if you're having fentanyl. These pills, what makes these drug pills different from the medicated pills we get from the pharmacy? The difference is that the methods used to make them are catastrophically different. There's a hell and heaven difference between both of them. One is made with proper care, with proper hygiene, with proper amounts, The other one is made in someone's basement, no proper measurement systems, and that's why so many illicit pills are being found in people's bedrooms, half-eaten, and the person's lying dead.
Right, because you also don't know how the density of the fentanyl, how much is in there, because it's completely not regulated. I'm not saying this is the right thing to do, but I have interesting idea, and since you've done a lot more work than I have in studying solutions for fentanyl, you're working with prohibition. We talked about this a little bit before, made alcohol illegal in the United States, and that resulted in more people brewing alcohol that wasn't regulated and was possibly had too much alcohol in it, was over fermented, could cause people to die on the spot, right? When prohibition was removed, the government was able to regulate that, and there's so countless examples of the government making something legal simply to regulate it. That has helped, and now people aren't necessarily dying from alcohol poisoning because the government is legalized and regulated alcohol. You have to be 21 years old and all, instead of 5-year-olds or 10-year-olds going to drink alcohol during prohibition and then dying from it because it's being made improperly, right? So what would your views be, given the research you've done? It's hard to regulate fentanyl, and you can't really legalize it like you legalize marijuana, because 2 milligrams you could be dead, depending on your body type. But I just don't know if there's a solution besides either stopping fentanyl from coming in or just spreading the word to tell people to not take it, right? It's hard to regulate something like that.
Yeah, so fentanyl is something which you can't just say, I'm not going to allow this in the state. People are still going to find a way around it.
Right.
In our own state, there was a drug mill pill which was capable of producing 100,000 drug pills per hour. Mm-hmm. Now, these constituted fentanyl pills too. The problem is, it's not with drug dealers, it's not a problem with the legislator of the state, it's not a problem with the legislation of the state. The problem is with the youth. There's not enough awareness. Majority of the people who are dying because of fentanyl, the leading cause of death of Americans due to fentanyl, the age is 18 to 45.
Right.
We have been investing in education for people under the age of 18, which is a great thing. But those people now get it. What about the people who did not get the education yet? Right. Where is their initiative? Where is their education? Why isn't the government doing anything about that? Mm-hmm. That's something which people have to focus on. Because if that doesn't stop, then these deaths will just keep growing. One of the solutions to that is, organize meetings in the library. We're in a beautiful library right now. Or have numerous pharmacies get involved in this effort. There can be numerous things. If there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
And about the prohibition thing, it's not going to work. Because the 18th Amendment was, the prohibition on alcohol. One drink of alcohol doesn't immediately kill you.
I understand, but what about regulating it into like a lesser form, so then people can get their fill? It's a hard discussion.
At one point, that fill will eventually exceed what people would consider good for themselves.
Right, it's far more deadly than alcohol.
Exactly.
That was the point I was trying to drive to.
Yeah, I mean, fentanyl is it's the best use of. I'm not saying fentanyl is a bad thing because it's used in medical purposes. Mm-hmm. Fentanyl is only bad when it's illicit. So blocking illicit, fentanyl is going to help.
Because it's impossible to regulate illicit fentanyl. You don't know how good, how bad it is. Okay, so we know that fentanyl, the main solution we have to do is, if there's a will, there's a way. We have to educate people. We have to educate the people in that 18 to 45 range. We can't regulate fentanyl illicitly, meaning it's a medical grade drug and should only be used for that purpose. But the conversation we should have now is but who is using fentanyl and where they're using it? So, audience, I have this map here. I'll be putting it on screen right now, so Arav and I can look at this at the same time. Here, West Virginia actually has the highest rate of fentanyl overdose per 100,000 people as of 2022. Nationwide, fentanyl deaths have come down by about 2% since 2022 because of the work of people like Arav, for example. But I think it's important to look at this. Why is West Virginia like that? Arav and I shared a dialogue about that. And yes, I'm saying Arav and I a lot. We both have the same name, so I should have addressed that at the beginning for any confused listeners. West Virginia had a big industry. They were into coal mining, and they had so many natural resources. That's been taken away, and West Virginia is one of the few states that never recovered from the Great Depression. They have fallen to, if you have nothing better to do in your life, if you watch videos of West Virginia or you go to West Virginia, they used to have railroads. So you see railroad stations abandoned, you see post offices abandoned, you see restaurants and town squares and post roads abandoned, and there's no industry there because their industry's been taken away. There's nothing to do there because any tourism or people have been taken away. So what do people fall to when they don't have money and they need to get through? Drugs like fentanyl, and ultimately they die. But a lot of people have the what do I have to lose mentality. So the socioeconomic level of people has a lot to do with it. And I know we might want to be censored about the way we talk about drugs related to race, but I think it's an important point that generally in the United States, people who are socioeconomically disadvantaged take drugs. In West Virginia, most of the state where the industry has died in small towns is socioeconomically disadvantaged.
Right.
In a place like Connecticut, where we see on this map that's on screen, in 2022, with 26.8 to 38.2 deaths per 100,000 people for fentanyl overdose, it's predominantly minority disenfranchised groups that live in cities such as Bridgeport, where crime is an issue, that are using fentanyl. I just want to get your view on this, Arav.
I agree with you. People from lower socioeconomic groups are more susceptible to fentanyl overdose, to opioid abuse. This is partially because of the lack of education they receive. People from low socioeconomic places, groups tend to stay in places which are low in revenue. For example, Bridgeport, it's a declining economy. We know that. In such places, education towards opioid abuse is something which is foreign, because there's just no money to do all of that.
Right.
As compared to affluent neighborhoods like Fairfield. Something which can be done is neighborhoods can help other neighborhoods. It's not about town boundaries. It's not about, oh, this is Bridgeport, this is Fairfield. This is about, we are America. We are one people. We have to help each other to get through this tough time. This is an epidemic. Thousands of people are dying, if not hundreds of thousands, and it's a sheer catastrophe which is going through our nation right now. And people have to take some type of initiative to this.
Right, and there's plenty of legislation, I feel, in Connecticut specifically against drugs, and there's support programs and everything. Do you think that there's an issue with the police being empowered, or why do you think that the police can't act on these laws?
I believe the police they are perfectly capable of doing.
So why not?
So I'm thinking of involving the police because whenever the police is involved in a community outreach program, statistically, adults attend that event too. Wherever the police are, there's normally legislation too, and that's just getting the word more around.
Right.
So that's why I want to involve the police. The Fairfield Police has done an extensively great job in fentanyl awareness, opioid awareness. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think another issue, there's a couple points here, and with any issue there's also a source. It's been in the news a lot, and we can dive into politics as I usually do on this show, but without getting too deep into the nitty-gritty, the new Trump administration in the United States has blamed a lot of the fentanyl that's come into the United States. And you were talking about how fentanyl also comes from Connecticut, to be fair. There's mill pills throughout our state, throughout our country. But a lot of fentanyl and the resources that are derived to create dangerous drugs come from countries like China, who some argue are trying to poison our youth, or countries like Mexico, where cartels make big money by sending drugs into our nation. So that's another reason why our country has slowly, I think, is becoming safer, because no longer are any drugs coming in from the southern border. Now less drugs are coming in from China. Do you think that this is going to help your cause at all?
I agree. It may help my cause, but what about the fentanyl which is already there in our communities?
Mm-hmm.
What about those which are being manufactured actively? The drug pill mill has already been shut down, but there are countless others. Undoubtedly, there are countless others in the state, in the nation, who are doing this. So, true, the threat from Mexico and China may be neutralized. What about the threat from within our nation?
Right.
And I think the current administration is doing a great job in neutralizing those threats. But we as civic citizens need to take an initiative too.
Right. And then there was an increase during actually the first Trump administration, though, of a 94% increase in overdose deaths from ages 14 to 18. That's as we kind of crept into that third wave that I was talking about of the opioid crisis. Fentanyl became, unfortunately, more readily available. As that was ramping up, that's when Donald Trump started having conversations about building a border wall. He built some wall. We have seen less fentanyl deaths overall since that has been built. Now, less fentanyl is coming in, but there's still the issue from within. So I think this is a really good conversation to kind of get an overall approach. Arav, is there anything else you want to say, kind of as we're wrapping up here, about fentanyl, your initiatives, the work you're doing?
I just want to say that no matter what our nation is going through in this epidemic, a lot of people who are upset with this epidemic. No one likes their family dying. No one likes their daughters, their sons, their fathers, their mothers dying. No one's happy with this. And no matter what our nation goes through, we have to keep in mind that we're not broken or defeated. We're not divided. We're the United States of America, resolute, unyielding, and united in purpose. And I believe that we should be the difference. Let us be the difference, let us be the solution, and let us be the force that will change this fight and will win this fight, not for few, but for all.
Right, it's really important, and I'll end here talking about the Halt Fentanyl Act was also passed by the 119th Congress, and like Arav was saying, this is an issue felt by all Americans. Even in Fairfield and Bridgeport, there's people who are dying because of fentanyl all across our beautiful country, and the Halt Fentanyl Act is empowering law enforcement, and it received some bipartisan support, I believe, to committee and in certain parts of the legislation, because even though we're in such a polarizing time, I think a great holistic message to end our conversation with, despite the polarization at the national political level, nobody wants death. Going off track here, but we're recording this just 2 days after the devastating shooting of Charlie Kirk at UVU during one of his rallies, and it goes back to nobody wants death, and politicians will fight and have different ideas, but like you just said, resolute together, the United States of America. Anything else?
We need to get more people in action into this.
We need more people.
Yeah.
We need to rally behind Arav's cause. I'm thrilled. Arav, we spoke on the phone last week. He wants me to get involved. I'm super busy, but I'm super thrilled to be part of that. This is an important issue. We don't want more Americans to die. Political peeps, this was a magnificent episode between my good friend Arav Sahu, who's going to be representing Connecticut, at the National Civics Bee in Washington, D.C. this November, sharing his ideas about fentanyl that we just talked about together today. Political peeps, y'all know the drill. This was Arav and Arav together talking America's opioid crisis. Peace out.